Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi Achint. COVID in China. Now that sounds a little weird. COVID from China sounds right. But today, we see the Chinese COVID attacking China itself. It's a sad story. There is no question about it. Human suffering is not a happy moment to speak about anytime in any place. But what we see in Shanghai is a step. What we see in Shanghai is a step forward. We see that entire city locked down, 26 million people, and a lot many more claims are there. About 40 Chinese cities under a lock as we speak. To discuss under the big umbrella of our China Watch, I have with me Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, who's going to tell us what's the story of COVID in China. Sir, before we start, I'd like to just add, you've said this before, and we've done a video in August 2021 saying China will never be a superpower. Something that I see coming true, sir.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The economy is down. COVID is back with a vengeance. It's gone back to its mother. It's gone back to its womb and proliferating as if there's no tomorrow. Before we start this, I'd like to just correct you. I just read it in the news, in one either Bloomberg or somewhere, that it is 70 cities which are under some form of lockdown. It's much bigger than we think, and covers about over about 40 to 60 million people under lockdown. So the problem is far more than we are getting to know, and Shanghai is only the spearhead of this problem. Right, and be that as it may, this has become more of a political problem than a health problem.
Mm-hmm.
You see, before we discuss about other things, I'd like to give a little preamble, which again, interestingly, I read as I was plugging on. The last century, when Mao was to carry out his after the Cultural Revolution and all that, he wanted to, shoot all the sparrows. He felt the sparrows were all, pests. So he shot all the sparrows. So when he shot all the sparrows, the insects proliferated and it created famine. Right? So the zero sparrow policy of Mao led to famine. Similarly, the fear in China today is the zero COVID policy of China will lead, where it will lead, they don't know, but they're equating it internally. And they feel that this entire business is now being politically handled rather than from a health perspective. This is to keep Xi Jinping in power. And there are implications of this. We'll talk of it down the line. In fact, I'll put one implication very upfront so that the understanding is clear as to what we are dealing with. In the past 2 years, all of us have gone through COVID. All our economies were down. All our healths were down. All of us went through lockdowns and vaccines, but we've started living with it, and our economies are recovering. When all our economies were down, the global economy had shrunk. The Chinese economy was not blooming exactly. It had also got hit by whatever we were. Okay. Because of the zero COVID policy, they could continue in a subdued manner. But today, when all of us are free and we are all reviving, China has gone into the state we were in 2 years back. So that puts everything in a mess. So they have another year or two before they can come out of this. So they're having it as a double whammy. This is the status of China as of today. what it's facing. That's why I kept saying that they'll never be a superpower because the corona will catch them, right? So then let's start with our dialogue.
Damn difficult to put that genie back in the bottle, huh, sir?
It is.
Sir, we see some very weird reports. You spoke about the economy, so I'm going to start about that. We see reports about factory owners keeping the factory workers within the factories for days altogether. And this lockdown has been going on for a long, long time. It's 3 weeks plus. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was watching an update where the Chinese are saying the lockdown will even be more stringent now because somewhere down the line people are not kind of listening. And in spite of that harsh lockdown, the cases seem to still rise. Keeping all that aside, yesterday there was a news that their GDP would be at about 5%. From their own projected about 7.5 or 6.5 or 7, or Chinese figures keep going up and down, but they themselves have said 5. Inflation, uh, costs with regards to this entire thing, isn't it stagnating, sir?
It is. You see, already from what I heard, that their Apple factory there has been closed. Most of their, you know, uh, motor, that is the motor, this thing, yeah, vehicle factories are closed. The bigger factories are all closed. It's only the smaller factories which are keeping people on premises and working. The trucking is closed. So there's no input, there's no output. People who have goods can't put it out. People who want to manufacture can't get new goods in.
Mm.
Because there, before you do any trucking, you should have a zero COVID certificate. So there's a problem on that front. Their industry is, as of today, down. Let's be very clear. 14 days, 28 days, 1 month, we don't know where it will go. And there's no way that it's going to be a zero COVID. We all know that. Okay, despite all this, we are still having our cases in India. Okay, so there's no, so that is on. On another front, China had made great plans to revive their economy through infrastructure, spending, all that. And most of this infrastructure was to be taken up by the states, that is the provinces, whatever they call it. They don't have money because they spent money on COVID. They don't have finances. So there's a financial crunch to kickstart infrastructure. In any case, even if you do kickstart infrastructure, you're not going to take it off because COVID, you can't do anything. Even if you might put money today, it's not for another 3 to 4 years that you'll get payback from infrastructure. So anyway, I've just taken two sectors. Their aircrafts are down, their passenger craft. I mean, take any industry, it is down at this point of time. They're doing this zero COVID, hoping to control this. If 2 years they couldn't control it, how will they control this now? And that it begs a question. So where is their economy going? What they're saying, 5.5 to 5% is all hearsay. Let's see what happens actually. In any case, what they'll come out with now will be a one quarter which has gone by, where things are okay. What about the current quarter where things have really gone down? It will go down again, no? So the future is not great. Okay. And this recovery is going to take time for China.
Yeah, absolutely. We've also not recovered to pre-pandemic levels as of now. So
No, we just all our growth figures 7, 8, 9, 10%, whatever it is, has just taken us back to our pre-pandemic levels. They have not gone to the bottom, huh? Which they will. So this is the time when they're going to go down.
financially speaking, sir, of course, you mentioned the burden about building these hospitals, doing this whole uh, testing and vaccinations and, the doctors which are required. They deployed the military within Shanghai. All this costs money. We look at China actually avoiding a very, very, critical opportunity for them within Sri Lanka to gain a little more foothold.
Well, I don't think Sri Lanka and all is too far away at this point of time for them. They are worried about themselves.
but the
See,
burden is real. Sir.
the economy is going to get hit badly. Their summit with Europe has not gone well at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Ursula von der Leyen, who's the European Commission president, she's very said there was no doubt in what we were speaking between China and Europe. We were clearly on the opposite side. That's what she has said. No doubt. Okay. So we had no issue of, there was no convergence. So that market is going to stagnate. America will naturally do this. Russia, at this point of time, I don't think any great trade will take place. So there are issues. This COVID and Ukraine war put together is going to hit them.
It's a double-edged weapon, as one can see it.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yes,
it's not only Sri Lanka. They're not even going forward with Pakistan. They're not going forward with many people. They're not able. Look, they're caught in a bind. It's just that it's not coming out very clearly. No one has analyzed it so. And the fact that they're in a bind is also very clear because Wang Yi came here in a hurry.
Yeah.
Why does he want to come here?
Chinese are not the ones that would go to a country to take humiliation.
Yeah, they've done all that because that means they're in a very tight corner.
As a matter of fact, he went back. There were no statements from his wolf warriors. Nothing. Quiet.
Nothing. No, some of their media said, he went and told India the benefit of joining us, all that. They had to give some positive stuff, but it was tepid.
But the usual rhetoric, which is firebranding in terms of diplomacy, was
that's gone.
Missing, sir. Some militarily wise, a fit military is obviously required for carrying out any operations. And today we see the military being deployed into Shanghai. That's just one part of it. Of course, they've got a large military; they can afford it. We've also seen, and this we were discussing offline. The first part of the year, we saw huge amount of air intrusions into the air defense identification zone of Taiwan. Right now, we see probably 2 aircraft going here and there and stuff like that. Does it tell you something about the military readiness with regards to Taiwan, sir?
I think it tells a lot of things. There are two aspects again, COVID and Ukraine. The COVID effect is that they're worried if they expose, if they get into an adverse situation where they have to go into a war with, say, Taiwan. And if at that point of time, with the COVID at its peak, if their military is affected and they can't go in, they're stuck, they're finished. See, it's like this. You carry out an intrusion. What if Taiwan shoots down an aircraft? If Taiwan shoots down an aircraft, for whatever reason, they have to respond. That means the invasion of Taiwan or whatever it is. Right? Okay. Which means that their entire PLA has to be committed. At this point of time, has COVID affected their PLA? We don't know.
Don't know.
We don't know. And they're worried about it, isn't it? They're worried about it for many reasons. Their vaccines definitely have not been effective. Right? So it tells you that, from that perspective, they're not ready. Then the Ukraine effect. What if they get into Taiwan and face a situation like Russia is facing in Ukraine? So from both perspectives, I don't think there, of course, there is this issue of COVID itself. You see, they've deployed military in the Shanghai. What if tomorrow they have to deploy their military at 20 different places? I mean, this is only the beginning. We've not seen the worst of it. Rather, we don't know because there's a complete blanketing of news from other places. What if they've deployed their army all over? Then what? Are they capable of now going in anywhere? Right? And the body language, if you see their media, forget air defense, all that. There are no patrols or no intrusions along the LAC. Their talk is not, wolf warrior type of a talk. Yeah, nothing of that kind. Earlier, when you read the South China Morning Post, which is probably their most balanced kind of a newspaper which comes out, right? Every day you had two or three items which spoke very highly of China, their economy, their military power, their X, Y, Z. Nothing comes like that today. So there's a shift, and COVID has definitely contributed to that shift.
Chinese are one thing that I know are very, very bothered about how people look at them, about their image and stuff like that. Anybody who kind of says something here and there, they are out to get him after that. Last year, we saw the Global Times mocking us by putting an elephant with drips. And that photograph
Yeah,
is kind of imprinted in a lot of our minds, and we can see that. They also put out a photograph that they were firing rockets where India was burning pyres. It's a very crass way of actually doing something like that. And today the bullet is kind of turned around. Having said that, there's a lot of feedback coming from the world about the Chinese zero COVID policy. It's being called out by pretty much everyone across the world, and everybody has shared some sort of concern or the other. You mentioned the Russian invasion as well as COVID, two big fingers pointing at China today, sir, which doesn't even like a single one.
there's no doubt. If you take the Russian invasion out of the equation, the zero COVID has become a political issue. It's no more a health issue. There are a lot of people within China who have said, let's go start living with the virus. Well, there's a major problem in this. There's a major political problem in this. First, if you start living with the virus, it means that your zero COVID policy has failed, which means the victory you declared is failed. So your system of governance has failed. That's not acceptable to Xi Jinping. That's this victory theory is what he hopes by now, October, November, he'll get his third term. So that is one part, one major part of the politics. The other major part of the politics is, say you stop the zero COVID policy. The moment you start the zero COVID policy, this virus will go out into the countryside. Now, if it goes into the countryside or it goes today, you're doing hell of a lot of extensive lockdowns and all. Now, if you don't do these lockdowns, it'll spread. If it spreads, there are a lot of old people in the countryside who have not gone through vaccination. This is as per their reports. What if they get affected? And what if they start dying? Okay. If they start dying, it will become social unrest, XYZ. And what if the thing becomes a major epidemic which China can't handle? You see, even in Shanghai, you've seen pictures of their detention centers which have come up. Huge detention centers. What happens if they can't handle this really outside? So far, they're catching any guy who's got any symptom and they're putting him in. The moment he tests negative, positive, they're putting him in. But what if it becomes real problems? And that is something they cannot afford at this stage. So they have no choice but to go for this zero COVID policy politically. The third angle to the story is that the Chinese people are vulnerable genetically to this. That is why it has come there. They have weak vaccines, aged population, breakthrough infections are huge. Breakthrough. I was listening to an expert, right, who was saying that the breakthrough infections, as we understand, that is, breakthrough infections are those infections which people get after being vaccinated. Right? You and I are vaccinated, you could still have that's a breakthrough infection. So the ratio is for mRNA vaccines, the breakthrough infection has been 1, say 1, right? for the Covishield kind of inactivated vaccine thing, whatever it is. I mean, technologically, I don't know what the thing is, but the Covishield, let's say the Covishield variety of vaccines, the infection has been 2 ratio wise. Okay. For the Sinovac and the Sinopharm variety, the breakthrough infections have been 9. So the scale is 1 is to 2 is to 9. So that means it is as good as putting distilled water into yourself. Okay. So yeah, I think Covishield is the RNA vaccines, right? So whatever their vaccines are, they are 9 times as worse as the mRNA vaccine, or 4.5 or 5 times worse than ours. And they're all been isolated, not exposed to the virus. So they'll get it. And if they get, they'll have a problem. See, we are all talking of Omicron and all that. What if there's a couple of Delta cases which get blown out? Delta is not wiped out, no. It's there somewhere. Yeah. No, I mean, it's logical, it's there. We don't know. Right? So they have a major problem actually. And it's going to be very difficult for them to come out of it.
The world is going in a particular cycle. The West kind of starts with the infection, it gets into the East, goes into Europe, and then comes into the central, Indian subcontinent and all that. And it wipes off the same way. India is pretty much at the end of finishing.
Yeah, only thing is what is now happening is it's all going to end up in China.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. These guys are off that cycle. So the resonance factor
they're getting back. It's resonating back into them. That's all.
The metal resonance factor, when everything kind of works in click clock, it's not working that way. And that's something quite concerning for India's neighborhood, because one of the things a lot of people are scared about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when the virus spreads in that larger population. And a lot of people said this about India as well. It's true to a large extent. It has more chances of mutation and creating something.
Yeah, let's see, because
crazy.
Let's see, because right now I don't think we can even speculate to that extent.
Yeah. So the Chinese people, we've seen a lot of videos of protests, of some very bad videos of people being thrown in buses and people being chucked into empty buildings. And today morning there was a report which talked about a whole apartment block was emptied out. Residents were thrown out.
Yeah,
that block was converted into a isolation center.
Yeah,
that just tells you quite the desperation of what is happening. Shanghai is an old city. It's not a young city.
Yeah.
So that's another big factor which is going to play in, sir. Let's talk about the protests a little bit, sir.
Yeah. See, the protests in China are new. This kind of protests were thing. But will they, snowball into something major is to be seen. You see, you also have to understand there's a psychology in China. What is that psychology in China? If you look at the Chinese history, they have had spells of poverty, then hunger, famine. It is not only that Mao's Great Famine. Even before that, during Chiang Kai-shek's regime, they had famines. Even before that, they had famines during the imperial time. So food and hunger is a psychological problem for the Chinese. Okay. This comes out of their own thing. Now you look at it. I mean, how many times have you heard, say, Prime Minister Modi talking of food security in India? I'm asking you a question. Have you ever heard him of, in the past 2 years, have you heard him talk by? No.
Past 2 years, give. I mean,
see, there's a lot of debate on agricultural reform. We've had problems on farm laws, all with the idea of, but it's not on food security, no?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no one has spoken of food security using export. Why are not exporting X, Y, Z, which we are doing today? But in China, every third, fourth month, seen reports where Xi Jinping has said that we should be food secure.
Yeah.
They are a net importer of food. They don't grow their own, uh, you know, grains. They are dependent on Western technology for their food grains and seeds. I mean, it's there is an underlying psychological issue that China is always worried about food and security, hunger and poverty.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, this is something which I've started understanding now, not before. Before this, I never had idea of this. It's only by when you read, you know constantly. Why is this man talking of food security every second, third month? And he spoke about it just two weeks back also
Yeah.
somewhere. And you then see that food is a major problem for them, and that is why you see that they want fresh food. They don't want stock food and all. And I believe they don't have that many refrigerators and cold storage and all. So when such lockdowns, everything comes, they fall short of food, and then they start panicking and going into this. And then the state can't give them food. They can't give them rice. They can't give them noodles. So there is a problem. So this thing is something which is peculiar, which has come out. So that will always hamper them in their outlook.
Hmm.
Okay. And now they would be more conscious of it because they were used to get a lot of wheat from Ukraine, which is not coming. Because they get a lot of rice from Africa and all those places. That's a different story. Cambodia, Laos, right? Uh, it is not as if, and they've stocked quite a bit. They've stocked a phenomenal amount of
One of the
food
largest in the
grain.
world, sir.
Yeah, it's not as if they're going to starve tomorrow, but it's the mentality.
Hmm.
Okay, it's a mentality which is there. That's why you find all these eruptions taking place. Now, the point what I'm trying to make is the contract between the Chinese and the government was always that the government met their uh, requirements of food and safety and all that. And people said, "You do what you want. Give us food. Give us our basic necessities. We'll not, uh, you know, revolt against you. We'll not quibble against what you're doing." Right? It's a social contract.
Hmm.
So as a result of that, and the one-party system, there is no organized way where it's going to turn into a mass eruption. It might well from now on, but the chances are less. So they'll continue in this kind of subdued eruption, more misery. All the best to them.
So, lastly, you kind of hinted about the social fabric, and the Chinese put a lot of focus into maintaining the social fabric. They detain people who are called as detesters, and a whole lot of terms that they've brought for this entire thing. Uh, we see the Chinese going into protests in Shanghai, probably taste of forbidden blood. Point number one. Number two is about the factor that we've seen cities being locked down before, but not to this extent, where people have literally been put to a task. This time seems to be a bit brutal. Even the Chinese kind of admit it to a large extent. Thirdly, how does this impact the politics, Xi Jinping, and the CCP, of course?
I think China is slowly getting into a situation where it's difficult for us to predict what's going to happen because it's going to be difficult for them themselves to predict what's happening. Uh, you see, as far as this is being handled politically,
Hmm.
it's all fine. When does this politics stop intersecting with the health problems or social problems? We don't know. When will it become a political movement? We don't know. If this COVID goes uncontrolled, it could well happen. It takes one odd situation to go out of control, out of the communists, for it to backfire completely. See, again, how did communism collapse in Russia? Because people were not satisfied. You kept the lid down, it continued, simmering continued. One or two things happened and the whole thing collapsed. Similar thing might happen here. We don't know. That's the problem with any communist system or autocratic system. You don't know what's happening inside. They say it takes an idea to create a revolution. When will that idea come? Why, in a democracy, why you don't like person A, अगले वो election में इसको out करो, दूसरा ले आओ, nappy change. Okay, बस. We are very clear. Okay, if it is not one party, it's a second party. In America, if it's not Republican, it is Democrat. If it is not Democrat, it is Republican. In India, it could be BJP, it could be TMC, it could be Congress, it could be DMK. Doesn't matter, but you have a choice. And the people are accountable to you. You're right. You might call it useless democracy, wasted, all that, but the choice is yours. Vote. Not in a closed society like China. Here, everyone has a right to speak. You and I also have a right to speak. Today, if I curse the government of India, can they do anything to me? They don't even have the power to close this video. But you can't do that in China. So whatever you are hearing about China, the problems, 95% of it is being filtered out. What you're seeing is just what maybe 2 to 3, 5% of the problems coming out. What is happening is a pressure cooker. So we don't know.
Will Xi Jinping be able to take out the gas, or will it blow the lid?
We'll ask. Even Xi Jinping won't know.
So, you said that Chinese, and this is just on a lighter note, that I don't think even the Chinese know which way they're heading. I call that the Pakistan syndrome. It's I guess best friends stick together.
See, I'll put it this way: Pakistan is an open society. At the end of the day, they might be autocratic, but it's an open society. Everyone, you come to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Ultimately, वो ढंडा आर्मी से आएगा, सब लाइन में खड़े हो जाएंगे. Is a different story. Not here. That's a difference. Okay. I mean, you take any place where communism has been defeated. It has been defeated. It has never been defeated in an organized manner. It has been defeated in an unorganized manner. Okay.
Yeah. That's a very.
It just breaks. It just breaks. It just shatters. When it shatters, it's finished. It might morph into another autocratic society. That's a different story.
Yeah, but that particular situation would be affected to a large extent.
If 10 cities, major cities, just I'm taking an example. If 10 major cities have are struck like Shanghai, and if some communication takes place between disparate elements and they all turn against the party, what happens?
And there are elements. There is no question about it.
Yeah, there are. It could be by the communists itself, various factions. If something is triggered one by one faction against the other, it could snowball into something we don't know. So let us wait.
I'd like to mention.
What I'm trying to say is that there's a possibility it might happen, but is it a feasibility? It's very low. I'll say this, but don't rule it out.
So I was saying, sir, I'd like to mention here that a lot of people will talk about the Jiang faction, this faction, that faction, and I'd like to, actually take this moment to thank you about swerving me out of that name politics, because names may change, but the situation overall will remain pretty much the same in terms of maybe Jiang faction, Liang faction, or whichever
that
faction.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
The situation will affect in a certain way, where one of these factions or altogether something will happen, and that's what you're kind of putting across too. So a lot of us would
and this is, if you look into the Chinese history, this is how it has happened always. I'm not talking of the history of communism and just go back before that. That's how it's happened.
Eye opener of a conversation, sir. Having said that, it's sad what is happening to the people in China. Of course, we are not as heartless as the Chinese to put out, heartless or very, very badly emoted cartoons about their misery. We hope they recover. We hope they get some sense into their head, and we're going to be pragmatic about it. Having said that, there are effects that are going to happen. There are effects that we will feel in India, because Shanghai is the economic and the industrial hub of China. So a lot of equipment may get delayed. Cars is something that we know, a lot of parts come from there. So there's certain companies are facing certain delays already. Thank you, sir, for this, discussion, the analysis. Just 1 second, sir. Light went off. It's going to rain. So thank you, sir, for this discussion and the analysis of the COVID situation in China, considering what is happening in Shanghai. And as you very rightly corrected me, 70 other cities in China. I'm quite shocked about that. We'll keep a track right here on Dev Talks. Till that time, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you.